Hello, everyone. Welcome to ITS 140. Mute your microphones if you can. Okay, so let's get started. So as I said last week, we are pretty much at this point done with the main topics of programming. So congratulations. You've gone through those are the main ideas that you need to understand really well. Go back to them, practice. And then now in the rest of the semester, we're really just going to look at, topics that are beyond the basics, right? So still important, and they will be a lot of good practice, but they are, just additional topics that we will take a look at. So right now, I've shared the course website, so you can see here. I'm going to go through schedule. So at this point, we've covered, the intro to the environment, inputs, outputs, and variables, conditional structures, which are if statements, modules and functions, loops, like for loops, while loops. You had your first exam, covered arrays and lists in Python, input validation and introduction to files. We worked on, more complex problems like the tic-tac-toe game, which used two-dimensional arrays. And then last week we covered files, okay? This week we're gonna look at a topic called strings and processing text with Python. It's a really great, very important topic, because, first of all, we're going to be using, at some point you'll be using Linux, and Linux, everything is a file, and everything, a lot of information is stored as text files, which means there's a lot of text to process dealing with strings. So we're going to take a look at that. If you do the data science track in our program, that mini concentration, knowing how to process text is really important. And just in general, right? So you want to understand how to process text so that you can be, you can actually do a lot of things. All right, so we'll take a look at that one today. Yeah, and that's the plan. So that will be today, November 3rd, November 5th. It'll be, strings and text. I haven't added the videos, obviously, and when I update this, I'll put the information. I also want to show you, if you notice down here, November 10th, that's a week from today, you will have exam number 2. Okay, make sure you are ready for that. All right, so it'll be very similar to the previous exam. So next Tuesday, week from today, we will have our second exam, very similar. Keep in mind, it's comprehensive, which basically means it's going to cover anything from the beginning of the semester up until what we cover this Thursday. Then after that, we'll cover, as I said, a few other miscellaneous topics. GUIs, object-oriented programming is one important topic that I will definitely cover. Just to give you a little bit of background on that, just very simple things, but also the problems that I'm going to give you are going to be, fewer, right? Just keep that in mind because the code gets a little bit more complex now, right? It's bigger, and so, as I said, that's why I want you to understand that after files, which is this topic, it's really like this is a second part of programming. So if you want to master the fundamentals, you need to master everything up until October 29th. Okay, that's really the key. Everything else is like selected topics. GUIs are not really that critical. In Python, let's say, and then object-oriented is, and we'll do that one. And then there's topics like inheritance and recursion. I will cover those just to give you an idea of how they work. Dictionaries, of course, that's a data structure that I will cover, and so on. List comprehensions, etc. So just specific things to Python. But as you can see, we're getting close to the end of the semester. Don't forget, December 8th is your presentation. So what we're going to do is next week on November 12th, during that lab period, I want to see a demo, a partial demo, if you will, an incomplete or a demo of your incomplete project. So I want to see what you're doing, what you have. So I'm going to ask you to please have some of your code already, laid out, right, by November 12th, so that we can, I can give you a little bit of feedback before, presentations later on in the semester, okay? So that's really important. So anyway, just wanted to give you some hints there about the upcoming things. All right, the next thing we're going to do now today is I'm going to get into the slides. I'm just going to talk about them, and then we'll do some examples. And then, on Thursday, the same, and then I'll assign a couple of problems, probably just something simple. So the problems are probably going to be a little bit bigger, but fewer, as I said. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So if you're following along in the book, it's really the top. So you should now be seeing my slides. Okay. And so this is the chapter on text processing. There's, so there's going to be the old, the book and the new book. Remember, the old book is more generic, and then the new book is more Python focused. Okay. But as you can see, basically we are dealing with text processing. So text processing is such a big topic that it's got its own chapter, right? Certainly Python is an excellent language for dealing with strings. Okay. So basically today, and really what we're doing is we're using all the elements. You can really think of strings as arrays, one-dimensional arrays of characters, basically. And so that's what we're going to do. So, we're going to look at character by character text processing. Okay, and then we're going to explore some of the approaches that we can follow in, here. So basically, basically this is a focus on using a lot of functions. So, Python is an object-oriented programming language, and it's got a lot of libraries, and it's got a lot of functions available by default. Right? So these functions operate on strings, and there's a lot of functions for a lot of different goals, but it's got a lot of functions for processing strings. But sometimes you could also process things, without the function. So manually operating on the individual characters in a string, and you can treat it as an array. So here we can see we got some of the functions, and I think we've already used some of these, like length, right? You've seen me use that one. So length of a string, right? So you can see here all of these functions, for instance, length returns the number of characters in a string. All right, and then you have functions like append, returns a string that is created by appending, one string to another. To upper, as the name implies, it changes something to uppercase. To lower, changes to lowercase. Substring is so that we can slice out a set of characters out of a longer string. Contains allows us to, returns true if a string contains another string. And you can see examples of these here, right? So we're going to explore these. Now, these names might be generic to, all languages, but we're going to also look at the specific terminology for just a Python language. Okay, just a Python language. So that's really the idea. Okay, so let's look at how to think about this manually, right? What you can call a character by character text processing. So most languages provide a way to access the individual characters in a string. Okay, and that's certainly true for Python. Often this is done with a subscript notation similar to accessing the elements of an array, right? And you can always treat a string in Python basically as a variable, as an array, right? So here we have some pseudocode. So you might declare a string, string data type, nothing new there. We call it greeting, and then we provide the actual string literal, hello world. And then if I want to display just the first character of the string, I can just do greeting and then the square brackets and provide the index. Remember that it starts at 0. So basically, I can access all of these. The 5 is the space, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, and so I can access all these characters from the variable. Okay, so we can use these subscripts here. You can see another example. I declare the string name Jacob, right? And then I use subscript notation to display the individual characters in the string. So I can just take, I can basically try to print out all of them. So you can see here, this would be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and so pretty straightforward, basically, how you do that. Okay, so here we can have a little bit, a better approach to printing out the characters by using, for loops, right? So basically keeping track of where we are by using an index position variable. So we have here, again, the variable name, right? And then I want to, declare an integer as integer, sorry, an index as integer. And then I just want to display the characters of the string. So I'm going to do for index 0, the length of string, y minus 1, y length name minus 1. So it's because, remember it starts at 0, right? So that will give you the number of characters, but because it starts at 0, we're going to do minus 1. Okay. Okay, so that's the example there. So once we know how we're iterating, we can just display name by the index position. So pretty simple, really. So we can also modify characters this way, right? So if we have a string, and then now we can say, I want to change the first character. So I use the index 0. So if I display it now, it's going to say, instead of coffee, it's going to say toffee. All right, so we have that approach. All right, so we have a additional, Python certainly has a lot of functions. All right, so that, that's one thing that we can try now as we're doing this is we can check the strings or a character for different things. So there's a function isDigit. So it returns true if character is a numeric digit or false otherwise. IsLetter would be the opposite of that. IsLower, IsUpper, that's good for checking if something is uppercase or lowercase. Is white space, right? So if we're just having is space, tab, or a new line character, okay? So again, all of these return true or false, which basically means that they would be very good for input validation, if you think about it. Okay. So let's see this one. So this is an example of how to count the number of uppercase characters in a string. So here, some of these examples are not necessarily things that you would always do. I mean, why would you really want to calculate the number of uppercase characters in a string? But they're good for just practicing, for getting your using a lot of for loops and just exercising basically your ability to understand the programming constructs, okay? So here we count the number of uppercase letters. Okay, so same thing, we do for index 0 to length of string -1, and then we can check, okay, for each character, grab string index, right? So grab that current character and check, is upper. If it's upper, then we have some kind of a variable, a counter, right? We have a counter over here, and then the counter will be incremented every time that we find an uppercase letter. So you can see how this is combining, if statements and for loops, just as I said, to do various exercises. So I'll think of some problems that we can do today to practice these. And then certainly the homework, I'll try to think of interesting problems to do. But this is what you might expect in the homework problems. I might give you, a paragraph, or I might give you a sentence, or ask you to look for something, and then I'll say, find this characteristic about that string. So you'll have to do little tricks like this. Okay. Any questions about this this code? No questions? All right. So here we have, again, as you can see, more examples. Okay. So here we have the function insert. Okay, and you basically specify the location or the position and the strings that you want to add and where to add it. So string 1 is a string, position is an integer, string 2 is another string. The function inserts string 2 into string 1 beginning at position, at the location of position, basically. Delete is kind of the opposite of that. The function deletes from string all of the characters beginning at the position specified by start and ending at the position specified by end. Okay. And so and with a lot of these things, usually you don't want to memorize their definition necessarily. What you do is you kind of always, try a function and you look at the output to see if it gives you what you were looking Okay. So here we have, you know, an example of one of these. So we have the string new city, and we're going to insert York, right? So you're going to insert it at position 4. So let's see, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So what's going to happen with this function is when you insert, you're going to insert York there, and everything else will move to the right. Notice that York includes a space here, so that takes care of the space that's needed, right? And then you basically get that output. So it displays basically New York City. Okay. So again, just a simple example of using the functions for strings. Here's another example of using delete, right? Or a type of delete. So you can say, I have a string, right? And I ate 1,000 blueberries, right? And then you're gonna you wanna replace it with 10 blueberries. So again, just 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right? So you're saying for the string, delete everything, from 8 to 9, right? So you're basically deleting these 2. And you do end up with, I ate 10 blueberries. Any questions? All right. And that's sort of just a set of examples that we're seeing here of generic approaches to this in the pseudocode. All right, so now let's, as you can see, a short one. Now let's look at the other one, the other set of slides. These are going to be more specific to Python. And then after that, we can start exploring just writing some code, having, fun with these ideas. Okay, so here you can see the same thing about strings as it relates to Python. All right, so these are definitely things that you want to practice. So the topics here will be, basic string operations, string slicing. So this term slicing, become added to your vocabulary whenever you deal with Python, okay? So slicing is just the idea of grabbing a subset of a larger set, right? So, like you've seen here, you have, a string or an array. Slicing just means that I'm going to take that chunk, and slice it out, right? So like slicing, a slice of pizza or a slice of cake from a bigger thing, right? So it's the same intuition. And that's usually a very common term in the Python environment as it relates to getting information or pieces of data out of something larger. All right, and then we're going to look at other things like testing, searching, manipulating strings, right? So like I said, we're going to play around with these ideas. So basic string operations, there are many types of programs. Many types of programs perform operations on strings. In Python, many tools for examining and manipulating strings. There are, in fact, many. You'd be surprised. There are some very powerful libraries, too, that can allow you to do some really amazing things. There's a library called NLTK, which stands for the Natural Language Toolkit. That's just one of many, and it's a really great library for processing, text, like natural language, that type of like language understanding, like AI would do. Okay, and so Certainly, there's a lot of very powerful libraries, but here we're just really at a very, very basic level. We're manipulating strings. So as you know, strings are sequences. So many of the tools that work with sequences work with strings, right? You can think of them as arrays. And so there's going to be a lot of options. So accessing the individual characters in a string, now specifically for Python, remember we don't always have to use an index. There are other ways to access an individual character in a string, but we can use the for loop. So we can, for instance, do for character and string. So if we have a string here for character and string, just like we've done many times before, this will allow us to get characters of a string. Useful when need to iterate over the whole string, such as to count the occurrences of a specific character, right? You want to find, how many vowels or how many consonants or how many R's or S's, etc., are in a sentence, paragraph, etc. We can also use indexing, of course, as we saw in the previous slides. The more generic approach, each character has an index specifying its position in the string, and it starts at 0. So here you can see my string index I, and that gives us character. Okay. So here's an example of iterating through a string, more visual example. So you can see here we have first iteration, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth iterations in a for loop, maybe. And you can see it actually here. So for ch is character. So for ch in name, print ch, right? And so if the name is Juliet, then we print J in the first iteration. In the second iteration, we're going to print the U for Juliet. In the third iteration, we're going to print the L, and then fourth iteration is I, then E, and finally in the sixth iteration, we print T. Okay, so pretty straightforward. The mechanism, as you can see here, for ch in name, and then we just print that ch. Questions? No questions. So as I said, this, it's a very easy chapter. There's really not much to it. Maybe just, exploring all the functions. So here we have an example, roses are red. We want to get a copy of a character from a string. So we want to get character A, for instance, right? So how do we do that? We can do it by index. So A is 6. So really, this is my string 6. Okay, and that would give us the A. There's only one A in there. Now, index error exception will occur. So this index error exception will occur if you try to use an index that is out of range of the string, right? So we're very familiar with errors at this point in the semester, and so you know that if it's out of bounds, it'll give us an error. So it's likely to happen when loop iterates beyond the end of the string. So we want to check the length of the string before we actually do a search, for instance. So length of the string function can be used to obtain the length of the string, and this will be useful to prevent loops from iterating beyond the end of a string. So you just do for, something in length of string. So you only iterate by that number. And as I said, you always want to print out those results to see where it's erroring out. We'll do some examples of this in a second. String concatenation, you saw me do this last week, right? Basically A plus B, where A and B are strings. So if there are strings and not numbers, they're going to be concatenated, right? Concatenation just means appending one string to the end of another string. And we use the plus operator. to produce a string that is a combination of its operands. You can also use this one, although you don't usually see me using those, but you can if you'd like, if you like that better. Okay, and make sure that when you're concatenating, though, that let's say you're doing this, right? Make sure that that one has an initial value. Otherwise, it will give you an error. Strings are immutable. Strings are immutable. So that means that once they are created, they cannot be changed. Concatenation doesn't actually change the existing string, but rather creates a new string and assigns the new string to the previously used variable. All right, so some of these things we will see better when we do the examples. Right, so you can see the idea here. Basically, the variable name was pointing or had Carmen in there, and then you do the concatenation, and now it's like it's no longer assigned to that split space where it's with Carmen is stored. You have a new one, basically. Okay. String slicing. So slicing, as I said, it's a concept that allows us to, given an array, let's say we can slice just a piece, slice that one out, or you could slice at the end, slice that one out, or you could slice somewhere in the middle, slice that one out. So it doesn't really matter. That's what the index positions are for. So a slice span is a span of items taken from a sequence known as a substring. Slicing format is basically you have the string, and then you have the start index, the end index, and between them, you have a colon. So the colon says, kind of indicates like a range. So usually like you would say from 2 to 7. So, but in Python, you say 2 colon 7, right? And that's the slicing that takes place. So the expression will return a string containing a copy of the characters from start up to, but not including end. Again, with these, you don't have to memorize these ideas, just usually run the code and see if it gives you usually you will know what you want from the string. And so, kind of debug it, look at the results, and then modify your code as necessary. Now you can, in fact, you don't always have to define the index position, so you can always do instead of this, you can do colon 7. Right? So instead of 2 7, you could do 2 7, or you can do nothing colon 7. And basically what that means is if start is not specified, then 0 is used to start the index. So it starts from the beginning. If end is not specified, then length of string is used for the index. So that would be the example of just doing 2 colon like that, right? So basically you did not specify what this should be. So it is just assumed you go from 2 to the end, which would be length of string. And slicing expressions can include a stat value and negative indices relative to end of the string. So when you have negative indices, for instance, it just means the last element. If I have -2, it means 2 elements from the end, right? So that's how that works. Okay. Now, the next set of things that we're going to look at is, some functions, built-in functions in Python to deal with strings. So testing, searching, and manipulating strings. So you can use the in operator to determine whether one string is contained in another string. I think you've seen me do that. So the general format and example is, let's say if string 1 in string 2. Right, so we're basically saying if, and I think you saw this before when I did the email input validation, I said if @ in email, right? And so we've looked at that before. Now, string 1 and string 2 can be string literals or variables referencing strings. Similarly, of course, you could use the not in operator to determine whether one string is not contained in another string. So that's when you would say, while if @ not in email, then that means issue a message, not a valid email address. Make sense? Are there any questions so far? All right. String methods. So strings in Python have many types of methods divided into different types of operations. So for instance, the general format, because Python is object oriented, is every string is an object. And so you can say something like my string, whatever the variable is, and then dot, the dot operator allows you to bring up attributes and methods associated with that object. So you could say my string dot method, and then method would be whatever that might be. So some methods can test a string for specific characteristics. So for instance, you could say, my string is upper, right? And that just means it'll return true or false. So that's why this says generally for Boolean methods that return true if a condition exists and false otherwise. All right. Now here we have a few string methods, okay, that we are going to sort of play with today. So you can see we have is alpha, is alnum, is digit, is lower, is space, is upper. So as the name implies, is upper returns true if all alphabetic letters in the string are uppercase. Is space returns true if it contains only white space characters. Is lower if it's lowercase. Is digit, we've talked about that. Now these two, let's see, is alnum returns true if the string contains only alphabetic characters or digits, and there's at least one character in length. And it returns false otherwise. Is alpha returns true if the string contains only alphabetic letters and is at least one character in length. You can see there's a little bit of a difference there. Okay. String methods. Some methods return a copy of the string to which modifications have been made. Simulate strings as mutable objects. And then string comparisons are case sensitive. So remember, Python is very case sensitive in all aspects, and certainly when you're dealing with strings, uppercase A is different than lowercase a. Here we have another set of functions that we can take a look at. We have, so now we have string methods lower. So basically this one would convert. So it returns a copy of the string with all alphabetic letters converted to lowercase. Lstrip returns a copy of the string with all leading white space characters removed. So maybe you've read something, hello, and the user had a space in there and you want to get rid of the space, so you can use a function like this, strip. It's a very common thing. Lstrip character, the character argument is a string containing a character. So it returns a copy of the string with all instances of that character that appear at the beginning of the string removed. so that's left to the left. Our strip is returns a copy of the string with all trailing white spaces, characters removed. Yeah, so, and this would refer to the trailing spaces. Okay, so trailing would be the keyword versus beginning. Okay, and then our strip is similar to L strip. Strip, just this function here would be returns a copy of the string with all leading and trailing white space characters removed, and so on. And then upper here would just convert all the characters to uppercase. Any questions about this part, guys? No questions? All right. So other methods include ends with, checks if the string ends with a substring, right? So you're looking for, let's say all the people with last name Smith, right? So you look for that in all your full names, or starts with, if it starts with all the people that start with J, right? You can do that as well. Find is a very handy one. It searches for substring within the string, and it returns the lowest index of the substring. Or if the substring is not contained in the string, it returns a -1. So usually, if it returns a -1, the convention is that it didn't find it. Otherwise, a positive value, including 0, to indicate where that string begins. Replace, that's one that I think I've used already and we can use. And basically that returns a copy of the string where every occurrence of substring is replaced with a new string. Okay, so, when you're replacing things. All right. Then we have other even more functions, find, ends with, replace, starts with, kind of the same definitions we talked about. Now the repetition operator, so this is a bit of a odd thing. It's a nice, something people don't usually use, but the repetition operator makes multiple copies of a string and joins them together. So you use the asterisk symbol, like the multiplication symbol. So it's a repetition operator when applied to a string and an integer, right? So notice that the combination has to be that this is an integer and this is a string. And instead of multiplying it, it's going to repeat the string. Okay, so you can try this out. So a string is the left operand also, and the number is to the right. And then the variable that wherever this is assigned, that variable will now reference a new string which contains multiple copies of the original string based on that value n, which has to be an integer. Splitting a string, so the split function, that's a very handy one as well, right? So we'll do that actually today. As an example, we're going to read some records, and that's really, I'm going to create that so that we can try out some logic. So by default, you can split by many characters, tab, commas, etc. But really, the default value is space. So you can split by space, or you can specify a different separator by passing it as an argument to the split method. And that's it. As you can see, this chapter is pretty easy. Not all chapters will be this easy. I think object-oriented programming might be a little bit new to you, but at the same time, quite interesting. Advanced arrays, also, we'll do a little bit of that sorting, although I'm not too concerned about that, but we will take a look at some of those. Are there any questions so far? No questions? All right, so if there are no questions, then let's practice some of these. So let's go ahead and switch over to the Jupyter Notebook. I'm going to start the Jupyter, and we're just going to see how some of these work. All right, so let's go ahead and all right, so you should now be seeing the Jupyter Notebook environment. I'm just going to create a new file, Python 3, right? And just going to, practice some things. So let's say name. And then let's say, let's think, trying to think of a sentence. The cat is sleeping. Okay, period. And then uppercase over here. So we're just going to try some of those individual things. So the first thing is let's see what happens. So I'm going to do for character in name print character. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is iterate through the string, see what happens. So let's go ahead and run this. And you can see I'm able to print out, all the characters, right? And, now if I did, I want to lowercase all of them. So I can try CH to lower. Right, so let's try that one. Okay, run. All right, there's an error. It says there's no attribute to lower. So maybe this is uppercase L. Let's try that. And if not, we can always just Google these. It might just be lower. Okay. And there you go. So now, it did not, oh, yeah. So I ran it this time, but I did not assign it to CH. So I needed to do this, right? And now it should change. So try it. Okay. Run it. And there you go. Do you notice that it changed? If you look carefully, you will see that the uppercase T over here has now changed to a lowercase t. Okay, and so that's basically the idea. Now let's say that we want to do the opposite. I want to change everything to uppercase, so I can, by that logic, it should be upper. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Okay, and now I'm going to run it. And what do you notice? Notice that all the characters are now uppercase. You see that? All right, so let's think about another problem. Let me think about something. So let's try. Let me try. Uh, let's see if this library is available. Right. So I'm gonna try a library here, and there are multiple ways of doing this. I just want to see if this will give me an error. So this is a library, and let's see if I can use it. You know what? Sometimes you find libraries in Python, or on the internet that might be useful for Python, but you have to install them. So when I ran this, it didn't give me an error. So it makes me think that that works. Okay. So let's say okay, so I'm looking for.
So if we wanted to delete a string, I was saying if you wanted to delete a string, so what you just put delete name, and I wanted to erase E3.
What do you
So let's say I want to erase the E from the. So I'll put delete. No, I'll put name. Delete name equals 3.
right? So exactly. So what I would do, actually, I'm gonna do a. You wanna delete it, or you just don't want it to be there, correct?
Yeah.
So you want th space cat, right? Okay, so let's try that then. So if we look in the slides, right, we can look for that function basically. And then kind of figure out from there. So we have these. We have lower strip, ends with, substring, starts with, find replace, returns a copy of the string where every occurrence substring is replaced with new string. So what I could do, old new, is, I think replace will not work. Let's try. See if we can just delete a character. Okay, so we can try. Well, we can do, there's several ways of doing it. So I think this is a good example of doing this the long way. So let's try it the long way by actually writing the code. So let's switch to the Jupyter. be seeing my Jupyter notebook. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to comment this out. I hate that this thing always tries to autocomplete. All right, so I can do for ch in name, and I'm going to have a variable called new name, right? And I'm going to initialize it to nothing. So then I can say, I'm going to iterate, but if not, oh, and I need to keep track of an index also. I'm going to say index equals 0 initially. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. Index is index plus 1. All right, so if not index equal, you don't want the first E, so that's 0, 1, 2. So if not, then we copy, right? So I would say new name dot append. And then what do I append? I append the character. But if it's just that second one, E, then I'm not going to append. I always increment the counter, and then after that, oops, I'm going to just print out the result, which will be new name. And actually, not append, I could also do new name, probably better, concatenation, ch. Do you see that? Does this make sense, guys?
Why plus it by character instead of one?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Why plus it by ch instead of one?
Well, this one is +1 because this is a counter, so we're incrementing the index. But here, we're just copying the cat is sleeping, and we're going to copy every character except the second position, right? So if not index equal 2, then we do this, which basically means we start with new name, which is there's nothing there, right? But it's still a string, it's just an empty string. And then we concatenate every single character individually until the end. So the plus here is concatenation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I got it.
It's in the slides. So it's the thing that I just described. So it's a good question. I appreciate it, actually. So I was going to do something else, but I think this turned out to be much, much better. So concatenation there. So now let's go ahead and run it. Should work. Did it do what you wanted?
Yep.
Yep. It did, right? Exactly. Any other questions? What if instead of just that, what if let's do this. Let's take a couple of minutes, few minutes. You guys think about this. How would you modify this code so that instead of replacing the second, third element there, index 2, that it changes all the E's to, instead of E, it changes them to R? What would you do? How would you solve that? You understand the question?
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Think about it for a couple of minutes and then somebody give me an answer. How about that? Or when you're ready. Any ideas? So we want to replace these E's with R's, let's say. How do you do that?
So could we replace, so let's say for child and name, if index equals string E, new name will equal new name plus string R?
So you're saying, I would say we want to start, so let's, let's not use this one. I'm going to comment it out, right? But leave it there as reference. And then now we say, if we want it to be an E, right? So we know for sure we need an E in there. So we want to say equal, but the question is what, right? So what? So we're iterating through CH, right? Or through name, and we have CH there. So could we just put CH here? What do you think? Thoughts? You think this looks correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So if CH equals, so we're iterating through name, right? And we grab every character in CH. So if CH equal E, what do we do? We want to, we're still copying mu, right? We could also here just still continue to use name, I guess, and just change the character. But I would recommend actually creating a new variable. A new name. What do we concatenate here?
Would it be string R?
Exactly, it would just be the R, right? So it would be the R. Exactly, so it would be R here. However, we need to have an else in here because if it's not E, what do we do? So we have new name concatenation, oops, sorry, equal new name concatenation what?
Cha. CH.
CH, perfect. Very good. All right, and so now we don't even need the index for this one. I'll just leave it there. So you can see here, let's go ahead and run this one. Did it work?
Yep.
That actually sounds funny, right? Their cut is sleeping, slurping. All right, so yeah, good. So that's a really great approach. Another thing, if we used a function, we can actually use one of the built-in functions. So for instance, we could try, without having to do this for loop. I'm not saying it's wrong, right? But we could not do it. So I can go down here, for instance, kind of copy this sentence. And here I want to do, let's say, instead of having to write the for loop, I'm just going to use the replace built-in method. So I'm going to say name1, right? And it's going to be name dot replace. And now the definition of replace is that it can take 2 characters, right? So we can say I want to replace, again, the, let's pick another letter. So I want to replace the, what's another one that repeats? The S, right? The S repeats twice. And so I'm going to say I want to replace S. And what do I want to replace it with? I want to replace it with the asterisk. For instance, make sure you put the asterisk in double quotes. All right, so now I need to print name one. Notice that, you know, by doing this, I just needed to, instead of writing that in that this whole for loop, right? I could just easily use this built-in function. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and run this one, and you can see here the cat, and then see here S was replaced, then there's a space, then the other S, and that was replaced as well by the asterisk. Does this make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's see what else we can do. So we did the for loop. I've done that, and then now the replace, we've looked at that, replacing something with something else. Now, what if we just wanted to replace the first occurrence? So this might be a perfect example. I want to replace only the first occurrence of E. I'm going to change this to E because there's 3 E's, right? So there are 3 E's. So if I just do, and I'm going to change from asterisk to F. See what happens. So now I'm going to do all right, and I'm going to run this one. See, the cat is, you know, and I changed all the E's to F's. But I actually want to just change the first one. So I plug in a 1 here. And now if you look at the behavior of it, what happened?
Only the first E is a F.
Only the first E. Only the first E, exactly. The other 2 remain. Change this to 2. What happened now?
Both the
Both
first
of them,
E.
right? But not 3. Exactly. So that's how much control you have it. Now, obviously, you could have done this, all of this, with for loops like that. And for the exam, you need to be ready to do this in both approaches. But, you know, as you later on, you would, you know, once you start writing serious code, you know, you're not going to waste your time doing this, okay? Instead, you will usually just use the built-in methods that you have available in Python, okay? Are there any questions so far? All right, let's try another one then, doing string slicing, right? So string slicing here, I'm going to just copy the string again, create a new one. All right, so I want to slice this string. So what can I do? I want to do the cat is sleeping and the dog is running or playing, let's say, or eating, whatever, doesn't matter. All right, so we have the sentence here, just a bit longer. So now I wanna just slice out is sleeping and is playing for whatever reason. I just want to slice those out and combine them into a string. So I can create new string, right? And I know I'm going to concatenate, so I'm going to have the plus sign. But I need to figure out the two pieces. And here, what I want to do is I want to slice, which basically means I'm going to take the original string, but just grab little pieces of it. So I'm going to do name, right? And I now use the square brackets so I can define the indices or the index range. So in this case, remember that for slicing, you use a colon, right, to kind of separate. So the same thing here, I'm going to do name, and then I put a colon. So now the question is, what are these values going to be? So I want is sleeping to be here, but also there should be a space in between. So you might actually want to grab the whole thing here. And then I want is playing without the period, and I want that there. So how do I do it? I just need to plug in the values there, right? So what are the values that go in there? What do you guys think? Any thoughts?
Would it be is sleeping and then character on the other side?
I'm sorry?
Would it be like on that first one, is sleeping, and then on the other end is the character, and then the other one?
You have to put a number. So it's got to be the number of where it starts and ends. Okay, so it's got to be the number. So what's the index position of I here?
9.
Is it 9? Okay, I'll trust you. 9. What is the end?
No, it's 8. It's 8. My bad. My bad. It's 8. It's 8.
How about the space here? What value is that?
$18.
Is it 18? Okay. And then what about the I for this one?
30.
30. And I want this all the way to the end. So if I want this all the way to the end, do I need to specify a value here, or can I just leave it like that?
Can't you just leave it like that?
You can, right? That's what the slide said, exactly. And so according to the slides, we can, right? And so now let's try this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to print new string and take a look at it, see what happens. All right, so print new string. So I'm going to run this code. And did it work?
Yep.
It did, right? Except that, you know, I'm picky and I don't like that period. So if I don't want that period in there, I would have to, let's say it's 37. I'm just kind of guessing here. I'm going to run it. Okay, so 30 is sleeping and playing. So that is not it. What is the value then? Should be
42.
42. Okay. Try 42. Perfect. And so now that's slicing, right? So that's what slicing is. Let's try another one. So I'm just going to copy this further down. And let's say now I want a different kind of string. I want the cat and the dog, right? So what can I do? So here, pretty easy, just leave it empty. That means from beginning. And then the cat should be like 6, let's say, somewhere around that. And then the dog should be what? 25. Let's say 30. See what that gives us. All right, so I run these and I got, okay, so I'm missing the T and D space, so just add 2 more. And then I cut the T out, so it's 24, and I'm missing a G, so this should be 31. All right, so if I do this, hopefully now it'll work. There you go, the cat and the dog. Very good. Questions?
What if there's like a big paragraph? Would you have to count every single index? Or is there like another way to actually find out the index?
It's a good question. So what do you want out of, so give me a specific problem. What do you want? Let's say you have a paragraph, right?
Yeah, like 3 sentences or something like that.
And then what do you want from that?
Like say some words from the first sentence and some words from the last sentence. Like would you have to count every single index?
I mean, it just depends. Usually what I think is if you have a paragraph, you're looking for specific words, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be the thing. You wouldn't probably, because paragraphs are going to change, so it's really there. You're going to search for a specific word.
Wait, so we can split using words instead of the index?
Sure. You want to split? Why do you want to split? You want to split a paragraph by word? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so like you said, if I said like the cat was sleeping, the dog was playing, and the squirrel was climbing, and I said I wanted to separate the dog and the squirrel, would I have to count the index? Or you said I could just put the dog is playing and the squirrel is running and split it like that?
All right. So you want to split this into 3 sentences. So let's go ahead and do that. Pretty good. So I'm going to need a list, which you guys know how to use lists. We're going to call it, no, not sentence, phrases, not phrase. Let's just say segments, segment, or segments list. That's what semantically, intuitively, that's what that means. All right, so I create a list there, and now you say you want to split this. So I'm going to say segments list, and I'm going to take name dot split, and I'm going to split on a very convenient word there, which is and. You see that? That's kind of what you want, correct?
Yeah.
And then after that, we'll just print segments list to see if we actually have the 3 things in the list. We're going to say segments list. All right, that's kind of the idea. So now let's go ahead. So remember, this is also in your slides. It just said if there's nothing there, by default it's space. So let's try just space.
You got an N in segment in that second one. You got SEN.
But what I'm saying is let's try just without anything, because according to the slides, by default, this will use the spaces, right? So let's try that first. Run it. You see that? I created a list of all the words. And then if I do for word in segments list, print word. You see that? So I'm going to run this, and I can actually print out all the words. See how nice that is? So, and that's just splitting by space. Now, you guys wanted to split by and, so let's go ahead and try that one. I'm going to go over here, clear this. And then now I'm just going to plug in here and see if that works. All right, so I'm going to try it out. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So I created a string of 3 sentences. The cat is sleeping, the dog is playing, the squirrel is running. And then if I run this, I got them both. Now, there's a little thing that I don't like, and that's that there's a little space there, right? Now, in the slides, there was a function that takes care of that. What was it called? Strip. It removes all trailing spaces, okay, both in front and at the end. So let's see if it works. So I'm going to do clear again. Okay, and now I run it. Oh, okay, I didn't like that. Oh, okay, I need to run. All right, and there you go. Do you see what happened? I got rid of the trailing spaces. So this space that's there goes away. This space should go away, and that space will go away by using that strip function. Did that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
All right. Good, good. Excellent. Great questions. Now, let's say that I want to also change, because, you know, I'm very picky at things, and, you know, I don't like that this one is uppercase, these are lowercase. So what would you do for that?
Will I use a replace?
Sure, you could do that. You can actually. So you could do strip, and then notice how I'm going to do this. This object, we call this method, and then this evaluates to a specific object. Then I can do another dot, and I can do replace, and I can replace all lower cases with upper cases. All right, so let's try that. Did you see what happened?
You capitalize all T's.
All the T's. The problem is I capitalize this one, right? And that's not right. So maybe this method is not perfect. Maybe we should just do uppercase of the first letter, right? So we could try, you know, and I leave that to you guys, actually. You can figure it out, but you can try to do uppercase of just the first character. Okay. Let's see what else. Let's say now, let's go back to the example. Let's do another example. I want to show you something. I'm going to do this one. one here, and I'm also going to copy this. Okay. But now I want to go back to just split by default. I'm not going to do this replace. I don't need that. All right. So I'm just going to, just to simplify it. So I'm going to do this, right? So I should create a list of words. So let's see. And there you go. I create the list, and then I can list them out. Now what I want to do is I want to rejoin them in a string, but I want it to be, instead of separated by space, I want it to be comma separated. So what I can do is I can do new string. New string will be, and then now I'm going to, in single quotes, I'm going to put a comma. And I'm going to say, I want everything to be comma separated. Okay. And then I'm going to do dot join. And what do I join? I'm going to join segments list. Okay. So I'm going to try that. And then, of course, I need to print this out. Print new string. Okay. And so this will basically print out everything comma, all these words, but now instead of looking like this, they should have commas. Okay. So let's go ahead and run that one. And you can see it did, in fact, the job, right? It added the commas where spaces used to be. Does that make sense, guys? Questions? No questions? All right. What else can we do? So we looked at join, we've looked at replace, slicing. Oh, yeah. In the slides, we had this example of having just some word one, hello. Okay. And then now we're going to repeat this word by combining it, combining a string with an integer using the asterisk. So we're going to say new word one, and we're going to take word one asterisk and then just some n. So it looks like the slides. I'm going to say n equal, instead of typing a lot, right, you just want this to be really large. So I'm going to say 100. That's a lot of words right there. So I'm going to say 100. You see that? And then now I'm going to print new word one. Okay, so let's try this one. You see that? So I was able to repeat the string. It would probably be better if I add a space so it's a little bit more readable. Let me try that. All right, now I run it, and you can see I was able to repeat the word 100 times or so. Make sense?
you just gave N100 just to make it like as a variable, just to declare that's
What I'm
something.
doing is it's kind of like I'm taking the word hello, and I'm multiplying it times an integer, and the result of that is that I get to create a new string where the word is there 100 times. You see that?
Yeah, I just mean like, why did you put N equal 100? If like, why can't you just do word 1 times 100?
You're right. I should have put n here. That's what I intended originally, and I just so if I do now it should be 200. You can see it looks a little bit larger. Make sense?
Yep.
All right. So one thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and read I'm going to try to download a website. Okay, so I'm going to say now import request. I'm going to have that here. I'm going to say import requests. It's a library that should allow me to download from URLs. And then I'm going to say URL is www.pnw.edu. All right, so that's university's website. And now if it all works, I'm going to say request dot get, and then just basically URL. Okay, and then now I'm going to print R. Right, let's see what happens here. So if I run this one, gave me an error, didn't like it. What's the error? Oh, okay, maybe I needed to provide the protocol. Seems. So that should be easily fixed. So HTTP, like that. Let's try this one. Response 200. So I was able to make a connection to the website. Okay. Oh, and now what I want is actually the content. So I'm going to say content. All right, try this again. There we go. Have you guys taken ITS 110 at this time? Guys? Have any of you taken 110? You should have taken 110 by now.
I have.
Yeah, some of you. So you know what you're looking at here, correct? This is, yeah, okay. So some of you haven't, but this is HTML. I'm pretty sure in high school or somewhere you've looked at HTML. Yes, exactly. This is exactly HTML. So what I did is I downloaded PNW's website, and that way, instead of having the cat and the squirrel and anything, we can actually just go online and download content from a website. Okay, so that's one thing we can do. All right. So this is a way of getting data from the internet and then using that data for various reasons. But what you probably want to do is you want to just download the text without having to, because otherwise, what's the problem here? You have all this HTML, you have to kind of clean it up. Let's try another one. Let's try CNN.com. All right, so I'm gonna do that. And you can see it's still, you know, all the HTML is there, but buried in here somewhere are the actual news articles. Okay, I'm actually just going to use my own website, which I know much better. I can do, okay, try that one. Run it. And you can see here, see it's got the information, this, you know, all the courses and everything, but it's all buried within the HTML text, right? So now knowing the things, now obviously there's libraries to do this, right? But knowing everything that we've done so far, do you think you would know how to clean this up and just leave the text? I mean, you wouldn't be able to clean it 100%, but you would be able to clean it a little bit more than it is now, right? So what would you suggest? What are some things that you would suggest to do here?
Could you just strip it?
Well, strip it just removes the white space, right? So really, what do you want to do? You want to remove the HTML tags, right? So how could you do that? We just learned how to do that, right? Do you know what I'm saying, guys? So this will be your homework assignment, by the way. Maybe I should have said that. So what I want you to do is you're going to download HTML over here, right? So you're going to download it. And we'll talk more about this on Thursday, but it doesn't have to be my website. You can download a website of interest to you. Now you print HTML, but I want to actually be able to read the text. So when I grade your homework assignment, the easier it is for me to read that paragraph as natural language text, the higher your grade will be. If there's still too much HTML in there, I'm going to, you're going to lose points, right? So you can see here, run it, print it. So I have this. So again, how do I make this more readable? What's a suggestion?
So can I make it a segment list then? Nah, bro. Can I make it a list first?
Sure, of what? List of what? So I think what I would try to do is just do the replace, right? So in HTML, you have tags. Like for instance, let's look at the bottom here. I have these P tags. You see that one? I don't want to see those, or these div tags. So I want to kind of get rid of them so I can do, and that's why I asked you, you know, if you've taken 110. So I want to replace that with nothing. Right? And I also want to, but I can do that multiple times for multiple things. So I can do the /p, right? And now if I run this, didn't like it. What is this error? A bytes-like object is required, not string. It might be that this is still bytes instead of being a string. So what we might need to do is we still probably need to convert this to a string. So I wonder if we just do string here, if that'll work. There's many libraries for this, so I'll certainly give you the library on Thursday. I know we're out of time today, but basically just be aware the homework will be something like this, okay? Cleaning up website data. So let me try this. Okay, that worked. Okay. Oh, okay, that worked, but I forgot to print it. So now print HTML. So the question is, did it remove the p tags? What do you guys think?
Yeah, it did.
Did, right? Exactly. So this is what I'm, the homework assignment, I think it would be a pretty good homework assignment. A couple of problems where you get some websites and you're going to clean it so that none of these things are there, right? Until this just looks like a paragraph, okay? But I'll assign the problems on Thursday, all right? But, this kind of gives you an idea, and that way you'll get to practice with dealing with strings quite a bit, all right? All right, so if there are no questions, we're going to stop here today, and I will see you guys on Thursday.